What's going on, Restoration Dominators? Rico Garcia here, your host, and I'm bringing you yet another exciting episode. This one is going to be really special because we're going to be talking about all things roofing and, more importantly, what it really takes in order to build and scale your business. But before I tell you about today's episode, let me just take a quick moment and thank our sponsors, starting with CNR Magazine. If you haven't gotten your subscription to CNR Magazine as of yet, make sure that you head on over to cnrmagazine.com, hit the big red subscribe button, put in your information, and boom, now you are subscribed, keeping your finger on the pulse of everything that's happening in the restoration arena. Also want to give a big shout out to Company Cam, but as per usual, we'll talk a little bit more about them in a bit. Now, today's episode is really exciting. We are joined by John Senac. Now, if you're not familiar with the name, John Senac is a veteran of the roofing industry, and he's also the individual behind Name That Shingle. He's an entrepreneur, he's a consultant, and so much more. And on today's episode, we're going to be taking a deep dive into not only how he got started with Name That Shingle, but also what he's done in order to grow and expand his business and some of the exciting things that he has coming up on the horizon. And more importantly, he also shares some tips and tricks on how we as entrepreneurs, regardless of our space, can go ahead and brand, position, and market ourselves for ultimate success. This is an amazing podcast. I'm sure that you're going to enjoy. Make sure that you share this podcast with your social media accounts, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, or what have you, because this is definitely one of those episodes that can move the needle for other entrepreneurs out there. And without further ado, let's jump into the show. Let's go.
Welcome to the Restoration Domination Podcast, where you learn actionable advice that moves the needle and helps service-based businesses dominate. Here's your host, Rico Garcia Jr.
All right, guys, what's going on? We are live. John, welcome to the show. Are you ready to help us dominate?
Absolutely.
Let's go. So do me a favor, man. Fill in for some of those people that are watching and or listening. They're not familiar with the name. Fill in some of the gaps on my intro. Let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Beautiful. So John Senac, I am almost 10 years in the roofing restoration side of things and transitioning more into the consulting and the product identification side of things. So I have John the Roof Pro that I do classes, training, consulting, private events through. And then I have NTS that I'm a co-owner in, and that's a shingle identification service. And anybody in roofing probably understands the need for that, but we can easily touch more on that if we need to. So in a nutshell, that's who I am, a 10-year roofing veteran and in sales and transitioning into some other items around the roofing space.
That's awesome. So let's kind of just start diving in with some of the bigger questions, and then I guess we can kind of start dissecting and see where the conversation goes. What is it that, as a business owner, as someone who's getting into, much more heavily into the consulting aspect of things, I mean, what's the one thing that you wish more business owners knew and that we're aware of?
As far as getting into the consulting space, or me as a consultant?
No. I mean, just business owners as a general rule, like, roofing business owners, restoration business owners.
I tell you what, I think the equation of time is one of the most challenging equations that I don't see is fairly assessed from business owners. And I'm guilty of it myself. I had to learn this throughout my process and from other people, but we think this invincible and unlimited amount of time, and we don't. And if we're not cautious and understand what our real time value equation is and where we want to put our time and effort as business owners, that can be delicate. So I caution owners to really evaluate what your time is worth and where you're putting your time, and see what are the things you need to put more time into. And more importantly, what are the things you need to strip out of your life or your lifestyle to see business be successful, business grow, or for you to achieve whatever your business goals are. It doesn't really matter what that growth is or goal is. If you haven't really assessed time, then it's kind of hard to proceed forward. You're just throwing everything else at it without an evaluation of your own time.
So what are some of your recommendations for, evaluating your time as a business owner, and, how to get better control of your time, how to buy your time back?
So I had a great mentor tell me one time, like, hey, you go through and you put everything in your calendar in your phone or whatever it may be. And that's fantastic. And you follow that calendar. And what you don't do is really go back and reevaluate that calendar to see how good was I at it? Where was my free time? What did I do with that free time? How many times did I open Facebook? How many times did I play a game? What did I do with that extra 15 minutes after lunch? And at that point, I started doing a actual calendar of my time. I had my calendar, but then on pen and pad, good old school style, right? And he came back to me and he asked me this question when I handed him my page. He said, why'd you only put Monday through Friday on there? And I was like, I was embarrassed. I was like, oh, I didn't know you wanted Saturdays and Sundays. He goes, are you doing anything that's helping you grow, helping you learn, helping you educate? Are you putting any time in your business on Friday or on Saturdays and Sundays? And I was like, And then he goes, why'd you stop at 6 p.m.? And I was like, so I was embarrassing. But it was a great analytic for me to think how and when and what am I doing and where can I find free time that I may want to invest in personal development, education, reading, development, dump into the business. So it was really a self-reflection of time. Actually writing it down caused me to think critically about the time that I was utilizing. And boy, did that really change. It changed in the roofing space, how I sold, when were my best times to sell, because I was analyzing all those things now. And then I was like, if I want to be respectful of my selling time in roofing sales, I can go be the best from this period to this period. And I can use the other time to go develop, learn, grow, right? So in the sales space alone for me, when I was selling day to day to day, that equation was valuable. And as I've now grown 2 companies, that has been incredible value for me to continue to do that. I do it quarterly. I go back and I do at least 1 week where I do an evaluation of time and just it's a personal check on my own time.
Yeah. And it's funny, right? Because it's not only the like everybody's got the same 24 hours in a day. How you're maximizing that time, that's really the secret sauce. And there's a lot of busy work. I think as business owners, we get busy and we feel really good and really accomplished, right? Because we were busy all day. So if we were busy, it must have been productive. But sometimes it's not about doing more. Sometimes it's actually about doing less and buying back some of that time so that you can reinvest in yourself, whether that's, learning, a new tip or trick that can move the needle in your business. Maybe it's just personal reflection, right? Analyzing where you're actually spending your time. And I just think that a lot of business owners just get caught up in the rat race and they don't give themselves that mental break to kind of sit back and analyze what they have going on a day-to-day basis. What's your take on that?
Oh, I agree 100%. And it goes even further because as a salesperson, I can remember that for me to sit down and do like handwritten addresses, right? Maybe I wanted to send out some handwritten addresses, nice homes, something like that. I already had the letter printed out. Was it worth me writing those or was it worth me paying somebody to do that? And if you don't understand the things you want to take out, what's an hour of my time to go sell one more transaction or to go visit one more homes or scout a new neighborhood? Figuring out what to pull away from and what to take yourself out of. Because you're right, the feeling of being busy sometimes creates the illusion of being productive. Okay. And I'm going to say that again. The feeling of being busy creates the illusion of being productive. And you can fall for that illusion quickly just because you were busy. It doesn't mean that busy equals productive. And as owners, if you're not evaluating your time, you can fall for that very, very quickly. Find somebody else to be busy so you can be productive. There's a time money equation there for some of the busy stuff that truly isn't productive for you, to where you can go be productive for your own personal growth, your time with your family, or your business's growth. So again, you make a good point there that busy feeling, you feel accomplished at the end of the day. But if you put it on paper, if you sit down and write it out, you may realize, okay, I was busy, but I wasn't productive. So how can I be more productive? I'll scratch this thing, give that to somebody else so I can be productive with 3 more hours of my time.
Right. Exactly. What are what top 3 questions comes to mind that you wish more business owners would ask if they were looking to be successful in whatever their respective business is?
The time one, time one's the big one. What could I do less of? I think another one is, what am I doing wrong and what am I doing right? And I do have some set questions I typically ask, but in the direction this conversation is going, I like those 2 on top of what time. Like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? Because again, we can get distracted by, we may be beating our last year's revenue number, but there's still something that we're not doing right. Okay. There's something we're doing wrong. We're getting bad reviews. We are, we're not putting up the same numbers, but the revenues, what's the thing that's changing there? And if we identify what's going wrong and then look at our pain points and our positives, our highlights, right? that all starts pointing back to that time question as well, to be able to say, hey, you know what, we've got to axe this, or this is where I need to put my time to improve this one component of my business because this component's running fine, right? Or do you put a lot of time into this because this is the thing that we're doing really, really, really right. So, and it's the most equitable thing we do, and we're going to pump into that. So time, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And if you can't step back and reflect on that, it's usually because you're too busy and you're not taking time to reflect on your own business anyway. But I'm going to change that to be, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Because in the roofing business, I think that there's a lot of owners. There's a lot of great owners out there. Step back, maybe even ask 2 other people, 3 other people, your top management team, whoever, hey, what do you think we do best, right? What are we doing wrong? And that question should be reframed to, hey, you know what? Go to my sales manager, ask this question. If you had a wide open checkbook, what's the thing you would change? What would you change or what would you fix? Because that thing they tell you is the thing you're probably doing wrong, right? The unlimited resources thing that they identify, it's no longer being asked as a trap question of, what are we doing wrong? Because sometimes they're like, well, I don't want to tell you what you're doing wrong. But if you reframe
Right.
that question to be like, hey, unlimited resources, what's one thing you would change about the company? You would change that. I should probably go analyze that, because that may be something that we aren't quite executing on. We aren't quite dominating on that thing. So let's take a look at it.
And that's a tough thing for a lot of business owners to do, right? To ask their staff, because most business owners, we want to have all the answers. But the reality is that if we did a good job right from the onset of being a leader and hiring people and getting team members on our side that are, hopefully even better than us in certain aspects of what that position is, we should be able to use them as a resource and say, hey, what do you think about this, and see what comes back. And a lot of times you'd be surprised, but a lot of business owners they feel that they need to have all the answers in order to retain that leadership role. But as a little side note, what ends up happening as a leader when you're bringing your team in and you're asking them these kind of questions, they actually feel much more involved. They have much more buy-in. Doesn't mean that you're going to take all the recommendations, but pay attention, because sometimes there might be some gold there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the flip side of that goes to, right, have you gone to your top performer and asked them, what's one thing that you think makes you the top performer? Do they say to you, I make 10 callbacks to previous customers every week just to say hey to them, talk to them and see how they're doing, and ask for referrals. Well, shoot, I've never thought of that before, right? Maybe all of our guys should strive to get 5 callbacks. So again, it's the question, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? But sometimes that question really needs to be a focused question and reframed to where that person feels like they can give you that answer without trouble or issues, or like you're questioning them or interrogating them. And that can be done, because the answers you get in those moments as business owners, well, like what Steve Jobs quote about hiring people better than him, like his whole goal was to hire people better than him, right? It's kind of a goal you should have as an owner. And sometimes we get a little bit proud of where we're at with things and don't realize, like, let me step back and see the talent I have and the areas that we have for improvement.
And kind of to drive this point home about getting feedback from your personnel, business owners always bring up their top performer and say, hey, let's go ahead and ask our top performer for their feedback. But there's a lot of value also to the opposite end of the spectrum. Go to your lower end performers. Your lower end performers can give you a tremendous amount of feedback as to why they're not at the top of the board, why they're never on the top half. And ideally, what you can do with this information is you can start figuring out whether if you have a good and well thought out system that allows for success, or a formula for success. And by getting that feedback from like the lower tier, if you will, you can identify real quick, like, hey, is there something that I can go ahead and systemize, that I can go ahead and create for my team to give them a better shot for success? So there's value on both, not only the top tier producers, but also on the lower end of the spectrum that can really turn a business around if you're asking the right questions and if you're willing to be a little bit humble as a business owner, right?
Correct, because almost everybody's going to fall in one of 4 boxes: skill versus will, right? They're either the high skill, high will. The high skill, high drive person is that top performer. You're trying to find out what they're doing right. But when you start getting into the other 4 boxes, not that the high performer isn't doing something wrong, but when you start getting the other 4 boxes, you're trying to figure out how much is the person's drive versus how much of it is systems and processes or education and skill that we need to implement, right? Do I have a clear process they can follow, and are they just not doing it? So if we go in and we say, okay, this person's low drive, low skill, I can move them over to really high skill and they can follow the process and they will be a medium performer. And that's it, because they're just not the high drive person who's going to go crush it all the time. But if I don't analyze where everybody's at in the equation and why they're in there, I don't change systems. I don't improve processes ever if I don't ever ask the questions outside of everybody be like Mike, right? Well, what's Mike doing right? But what are the other things going on in these other three boxes? Because Mike's high skill, high will. There's people in these other three boxes, and we got to figure out why they're in those three boxes and can they move to any of the other boxes? That's really where it comes in. So yeah, great questions can be asked at all levels to learn the health and viability of your company and just understand what's the heartbeat, right?
Right. So, I mean, obviously, as an individual that's grown a couple of businesses and you're in the mix, you're seeing a lot of other businesses as well. You're helping them grow as well. If you had to look kind of looking back hindsight, what would you say the 3 keys to success in business and or life has been for you up until now?
My own evaluation of time. You're probably going to hear me say that till you're sick of it for the sake of,
it's so important though, right? The evaluation of time. Like, you know, most high octave entrepreneurs are always talking about evaluate your time. What is it that you're spending your time on? Where can you maximize your time? How can you buy your time back? That's the one thing. Like, if money is used for anything, it should be used to buy back as much of your time as possible.
Yep, absolutely. I would trade that, right? Always looking towards personal growth, personal development, because I think that there is a certain failure in complacency. And I get it. There is a level of person that they hit that. And with that, that means for me, I'm trying to always live on the edge of my comfort zone. I think that's where really a lot of growth can happen, is on the edge of comfort zone, because you're challenging yourself, you're pushing yourself. You know, you don't want to be so extreme outside of your comfort zone that you're just lost, but you really need to find the balance to live right on the edge of your comfort zone and taking what you are bringing in to develop your knowledge and your learning, bringing it to the edge of your comfort zone and pushing to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And that has really been the thing that's challenged me to my success now, is let me get outside of my comfort zone. And I guess a good reference is 3 years ago, I think I had I never touched Facebook. I had 50 people and it was all family and friends. And now I have a group with 13,000 people in it. I pushed myself outside of my comfort zone. I saw a relevance to that, and I pushed myself outside of comfort zone. And that's been a successful thing for me. And that's just one example, but you have to be willing to get outside your comfort zone to really challenge yourself to the max.
What are some practices that you would recommend for a business owner to use or to implement to try to stretch themselves a little bit and get outside of their comfort zone?
Bring in an outside individual, right? And sometimes that's outside of industry. We have this tendency to kind of fall into peer traps where the people we're talking to are very industry or specific. And sometimes it takes the outside view of surrounding yourself by a few other business owners. Pull out 1 or 2 hours and go do something different. And it may not be business related to start. Maybe you spend 1 hour on meditation. Maybe you add a workout routine. Maybe you have something new that you do as your morning routine or whatever it may be. Doesn't matter what you add to it. Just try and do something a little bit different. Try and surround yourself with a peer in a different industry to learn from them as well. And you'll be amazed what you pull from that to say, hey, and then I think that, we have so much access to good information, audiobooks, read, if you're not a good reader, audiobooks is key, but learn from, because these are people that have a path to success usually that was so good that they were able to write a book about it. So let me get out of my own head and let me see what other person's path is and realize there's more than my approach to this. And that's probably going to start pushing you to the edge of your comfort zone, at least the first nudge to get there. And then you may say, hey, now I need this class. Now I need this private tutor. Now I need to bring someone in, and you're continuing to move through those things. But set aside the time, because if you don't pull time away for it, you just won't commit to it. You will never arrive there. You will continue to live, like I said, busy, but maybe not productive. You will continue to live in your comfort zone.
Right. And there's nothing worse than being successful but living in fear. And what I mean by this is there are plenty of people that have reached a certain degree of success in their business, but they don't know exactly what got them there. They are afraid every single morning that if they misstep, that they're going to lose it all. So yes, relatively they are successful, but because they're not spending the time and energy to reinvest in themselves, to get a mentor, to get a coach, to read the book, to attend the course, to attend the seminar, they're constantly on edge because they can never retrace their steps to success again. So all of these resources that are available, use them. If you don't like to read, no big deal. Use, audiobooks. You don't like audiobooks and you think that an audio 2.5 hours of an audiobook is too long. Listen, download the Blinkist app, right? $80 for the year. And you can, 10 minutes, you can go ahead and blow through books and you get all of the major concepts, right? So many different ways that you can go ahead and expand. And the reason why I bring this up is because there are a lot of people, and you see this as well, where they just don't invest the time and energy because they kind of feel like, hey, you know what? I kind of made it and I'm kind of comfortable and I don't want to, it's almost like they don't want to be informed of the stuff that they don't know about.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's amazing to me. There's a lot of resources, but we do get distracted and don't realize. And I have to thank my wife because I'm a terrible reader. I struggle getting through books. I am very much math, data, numbers, like reading is not my thing. I have to be very passionate about that topic. So the introduction of audiobooks for me was a much better way for me to get that information in a manner in time segments that I can digest it. I've got a lot of long drives. I've got travel. I've got different things I do. And instead of just sitting there wasting that time, which is what I felt like it was, now I get that time. I don't have to take time away from my family to read that book. I can do that in my commute. I can do that on my plane. I can do whatever it may be. That's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah. And also, and kind of like a side note, because I kind of geek on this kind of stuff, how you read and or how you consume information, especially for an entrepreneur or a business owner, should not be passive whatsoever. It should be intentional. So even for you dominators out there that are listening to the podcast, odds are you're probably listening to Apple Podcasts, right? Let's just use that because it's probably one of the biggest platforms out there. But if you hear something, or if you hear a link or a resource or something like that, if you're driving right now, or if you're on the treadmill, or if you're maybe you're on a project and you're working right now, and we just dropped this like amazing gem, it's hard. You kind of have to like go out of your way to stop, find a pen, or you're trying to commit it to memory right there on the spot. And then you're like, man, what was this one thing that I really wanted to get back to? So using technology, like there's, for example, an app called Air, AIRR, which is a podcast. And let's just use this as a singular example, which is a podcast service. And what it does is it gives you the ability to earmark whatever portion of that conversation is. It kind of gives you some context, and you can go ahead and add your notes in. So what this does is now it takes what would have been possibly passive and creates this active way of engaging with information. So that way, if you ever need to recall that, it's a couple of clicks away, and now you've got all the resources at your fingertips. Like, how many times haven't you read a book, or you attended a course, or you did something, you're like, man, I know that someone mentioned something about this thing, but now I can't find it anywhere, right? Because you were doing it passively, as if you are looking at it from a more aggressive standpoint of like, how do I get this information and never lose it again? Or have it categorized in a way where if I ever need it, it's right there at my fingertips. Like, that's really the way to absorb all of this info.
Yeah, you need to be able to take that information and turn it into action items. And it's not to say all of it will be action items, but still need to be able to turn it into action. The things that are actionable in there, relevant to your business, you need to be able to turn those into action items.
Yeah, I love it. So real quick, I want to go ahead and kind of like switch gears here. I want to talk a little bit more about, your companies and kind of how you've built them, and kind of what's on the horizon. And we also want to go ahead and talk about a little bit more about like marketing in, as an entrepreneur, not only from a business standpoint, but also as a personal brand, right? Because now people are doing business with people. It's not doing business with corporations as much anymore. But before we go ahead and do that, let me just take a quick moment, thank our sponsors. We'll be right back. Hey, Dominators, real quick, let me ask you a question. How would you like to increase productivity? How would you like faster claims resolution? And more importantly, how would you like to reduce litigation. Well, this is exactly what Impartial allows you to do. Impartial creates timely, accurate estimates for faster and fair claim settlement. Building upon Matterport's technology, the Impartial Scope tool extracts the relevant data embedded with pre-mitigation and post-mitigation scans and subsequently renders an exactimate or assemblability estimate that can be approved by a carrier without any hesitation. The magic here is that the software helps contractors generate mitigation and repair estimates for more rapid approval from insurance carriers while removing the burdensome administrative process. Each Impartial estimate is produced with objective accuracy using immersive 3D imagery and precise physical and geospatial measurements. Impartial, in my opinion, is one of those tools that simply can go ahead and change your business. And with so many features such as impartial tags, timestamp matter tags, the ability to upload JPEG, PNG, ESX, and so much more. Impartial is that software that could genuinely change your business. Make sure that you check them out in the video description below or in the show notes and see for yourself. Hey, Dominators, real quick, let me ask you a question. Have policyholders struggled to come up with your money because it's held with the mortgage company? Or does the percentage of uncollected debt that you collected in 2021 exceed over 2.5%? Or even better, let me ask you this. Do you dread negotiating with your policyholder when it comes time to collect your final payment and deductible? So look, if you answered yes to any of these questions, then you need to check out Surety. You see, Surety is a third-party fund control company. And what they do is they ensure that you get paid faster and, more importantly, completely for the hard work that your crews are doing. Surety relieves not only the policyholder, but you of tremendous administrative burden while ensuring that the claims process, and more importantly, the proceeds flow via ACH to the rightful owner, you, the restorer. And here's the best part. For less than the average credit card fee, Surety delivers on numerous fronts. So here's what I want you to do. If you want to learn more about how Surety can help you, I want you to head on over to www.surety.com/dominate and request a free demo today. Now listen, Restoration Domination listeners, just like you, are going to receive a really cool offer. And here it is. You're going to receive an exclusive offer, which includes free processing for the first insurance claims check and 3 months of free access within their network. Again, that's Surety, sureti.com/dominate. Photo documentation is possibly one of the most important aspects of what it is that we do in the restoration business. Not only so that the client knows exactly what's going on, but also so that you can prove your work to insurance companies. One of the best ways that I found to go ahead and document our projects is by using Company Cam. Company Cam is an amazing app. It has so many features, everything from timestamped and GPS located photos, individual project files, unlimited photo storage, in-app communication with your crew, a live stream of all of your projects as the photos are coming in, as if it was an Instagram feed. So from a managerial standpoint, Company Cam can help you there as well. But more importantly, it gives you the ability to protect your organization while documenting and keeping everything nice and neat. So we've got a really special offer for you. If you go to companycam.com/dominate, not only will you get your 14-day free trial, but you're also going to get the first 2 months 50% off. So again, head on over to companycam.com/dominate, get the app, and I'm sure you're going to love it. All right, so we're back. Let's get into the marketing side. Let's get into the growth side. Let's talk about your current businesses right now and kind of like what your mindset and your process was as you were scaling and kind of what's on the horizon for you.
Sure. So some basic things that kind of were built in me in the process of working in roofing, restoration, and sales for as long as I did was, you're always kind of, for me, I was always trying to chase my own trophy, right? Like beat myself. So the concept and mindset of like bettering that year after year after year existed for me. As I went to look into speaking engagements and consulting, the second I got a taste of that, it was like, how do I do more? And what does this turn into? But I had what I would consider to be a very humbled approach as I went into that. that I, through good mentors, understood the value of serving, not just forcing, not just saying, hey, look, I'm an expert and I'm a spotlight or anything like that. It was, how can I help? And that servant mindset really helped build the consulting brand that I have. It started with a very small panel. Then it turned into a couple speaking engagements because I wanted to serve on that panel. I wanted to provide information and education. And then that turned into, can you come speak at this? And then right as those speaking engagements were coming to me, COVID hit and they all got canceled, right? Like there was no congregating of people to be able to have anything happen there, but people still needed help. So I developed relationships and private clients, and I was helping them work through systems that I was using to sell during that process. And then Facebook, social communities that I was quote unquote afraid of or very, very anti or against in that process. I got out of my comfort zone and I used all of that to scale John the Roof Pro. And this became something that after everything kind of lightened up and we were starting to put together speaking engagements and I was getting back in front of people, then it was visible who I was and the referrals came and those people that had hired me before were at the same events and talking to other people. And it just became a very organic growth path of, I'm going to go in this to share knowledge, to serve and to help. And people will see the value in that. And then I will continue to promote that value once it exists. So I created the value, created trust. And then that's the thing that I've promoted through the consulting side. And now I do about one trip out for a private client a month to go work with their team independently. And short of the summer months, I like to do a class a month. So I stockpile a few in the winter and a few in the fall, just because everybody's busy roofing in the summer. A lot of sales guys don't like to break away from their day of selling. And I understand that to go to a class, but that scaled very, very organically. Flip side of that, looking at NTS, when we came up with the idea of this shingle identification and felt like there was really only one dominant person in the market doing that and that there was a lot of room for entry, we spent sleepless nights, me and a partner developing that, working on that, writing the reports, creating the shingle identifications. My wife in our old houses before I moved, in our garage was full of shingles and granules wherever. It was just a mess, and my wife was patient with that. But I put a little bit of that servant mindset into it. And then I put a very, I don't want to use the wrong word here. I'll say authoritative for lack of a better word, but conviction is probably a better word. I put a lot of conviction behind that, a lot of belief. And I was fine with failing. I accepted that it could fail. And I think that was really valuable for me. I knew that if I was going to fail, I was going to at least fall forward, not fall back. And that was my mindset going into scaling that. I was going to put the time in. I was going to write the reports. I was going to get them out there. I was going to answer people's questions. I was going to take every phone call. And if I failed, it would be falling forward. And there'd be something else that we could build on and grow on because I failed falling forward. And I got aggressive about that. And we wrote, I want to say it was like 1,500 reports, bootstrapped, just me and a partner writing those reports to start and get those on the market. And then we had so much trust because of that. And that group, the Facebook group that centered around that had so much growth and development. Went from 1,000 members to like 7,000 or 8,000 members by the time we opened the brand public for anybody to be able to purchase a report online for, that it was just like, turn the switch on. But I was willing to fail and I was ready to fail falling forward instead of being reserved and scaled back and falling back if I was going to fail. So the lack of fear of failing is what kept me on the edge of my comfort zone, knowing that, again, I'm on the edge. If I'm going to tip, I'm tipping forward.
And there's something to be said about embarrassment too, right? Like setting the ego to the side. I mean, the ego kills a lot of opportunity. It kills a lot of forward momentum because there's a certain risk factor, right? Of putting yourself out there. You're like, man, like, am I really doing this well? Is this really what the market needs? How are people going to like take to me? Like, there's all of these things and weird thoughts that start to take place. And, in your experience, is that one of the major things that hold entrepreneurs back on the road to success?
Yes. And I will just, for my own self-reflection of that, being in roofing sales, it's easy to get an ego as you get to $1 million and you're producing at a high level and you kind of feel a little bit like a hot shot. But again, I was fortunate to have good training, good mentors, and good people around me to realize, like, set the ego aside. So when I entered the other businesses, I entered that with more of the servant mindset. So the ego wasn't in the way to start. And it's been helpful because now I keep that in the back of my mind as things are growing and scaling. That ego tends to stay aside Because I'm an A-type personality. That ego, it comes knocking at my door every now and then. Like, I'd be lying if I said it didn't. But keeping that aside has been incredibly helpful. And it's easy to fall for it. I mean, as an owner, if you see success and things are going, it's easy to feel that. And then that ego, again, it can come knocking at the door and it can slow you down when it gets there.
So kind of like tying this into marketing and, not only a business brand, but also a personal brand. Let's dig in a little bit on that front. What's your number one overarching take on marketing? What do you think people are doing right on marketing? Do you have certain marketing mediums that you prefer versus others? Let's just go ahead and take a deeper dive into that.
Sure. So I think the thing that the people that are doing marketing right are consistent. At the end of the day, I think if I was just put one word to it, they're consistent. You may not have the best ad, but are you consistent? Are you making the impressions? Are you everywhere to that person? Like, what's the consistency you've created in that? And that's true with sales too. You show up, you knock a neighborhood, you didn't feel good about it and you bailed, and then someone comes in behind you and bats cleanup. Were you consistent? Did you show back up? Did you get one build in there and you showed back up the day of the build? So consistency will really, really, trump that. And I think that it's easy for people to, especially on the social media side, to get in there, get started, and then they lack consistency once they get into that social media and they start doing things on here and they just lack consistency. It doesn't have to be the best. It doesn't have to be the greatest. Start with consistency, because I think from there, you will start learning what your market, what your industry responds to, what they respond best to. And then you'll continue to learn what I want to add, change, tweak, inform, keywords, all that stuff, and then create consistency with the best products, consistency with the best keywords, consistency with the best marketing platform, consistency with the most relevant social media platform for your age group, whatever it may be. That feedback will come from consistency. If you have irregularities in how you're marketing, you really don't have data or analytics to go back and say, I'm marketing really well or I'm marketing really bad. You have skewed statistics.
Yeah. And just not having to do everything is also key, right? So and we see this with entrepreneurs all the time. They're like, oh, well, we could do this, we could do this, we could do that. They choose to do everything, but then you're not doing any one thing well. You haven't done a full buy-in on any one platform or any one medium. So being able to kind of take a step back and being analytical about it and saying, hey, this is the one area that I'm going to concentrate my efforts in. This is what's relevant to me, my business, and what actually fits my personality, which I think is important too, right? Just because you should do video, but if you're a great writer and you enjoy writing, and you're going to give yourself a better shot of being consistent if you were just to write out your content as opposed to trying to do 50 shots and 50 takes to say the exact same thing on video, then listen, do the writing, do what makes you feel good, because that's going to give you a better winning shot. And there's a tribe for that. There are people out there that are going to read as opposed to watch a video. So just because there are all of these options doesn't mean that you need to do all of these options. Although I will say nothing seems to be as powerful as video, and people feel some kind of way about video, right? What do you think one of the top modalities are when it comes to delivering content?
So first of all, I think video's king, and it took me a minute to really get comfortable with that. And this is, again, I'm somebody who's used to selling and knocking doors and being in front of people, but there is this tough barrier you have to cross in creating video content for some people. And it's two-sided, right? You got to watch good video content to say, hey, these are the things I want to pick out of there. But I can tell you this, do it, like record yourself, even if it's not live, even if whatever it may be, record yourself and then listen to it and then watch it. And then don't be too critical, right? The reason I encourage everybody to record it and listen to it was the message good? Because the video may not be great, and you can look at the video and you could hate it, but was the message good, right? If the message was what you wanted the message to be, put the video out there, right? Like start being consistent with that thing, because otherwise you can sit there and be like, oh, I touched my nose, or whatever it may be. Was the message good, right? Did you provide your listener with the thing that they need, not what you need? And again, that's where consistency helps, because you'll get the feedback you want there. But are you informing? Are you helping? What's the thing for your niche or your market that is helpful? And I think in the roofing industry, education is very, very powerful. Informing is very powerful, especially in a personal branding side, constantly having information out there that, hey, I could direct my homeowner and be like, oh, here's a little video I made about this, or hey, you got questions about this? Let me reference this to you, right? Those little bits of information give your viewer, your user, your customer, your consumer something that is informative and not salesy. I can go be salesy all day long in front of a person, right? But that video content's about repetition, familiarity, impressions, and constantly being in front of them. So record yourself, then literally put the phone down, play, and put the phone down, face down, and listen to it. Was my message good? Great. Get the video content out there.
Yeah. And kind of to expand on that, and this is something that I've been highlighting quite a bit often, is when you're face to face with a prospect and they ask you a question that you've answered a million times, and it's the exact same answer. This is a universal answer because it's just your industry standard. It's your common practice. It's how you operate. That customer could, in a lot of instances, be like, as they're listening to you speak, they might be like, this sounds like he's trying to sell me something, even if you're not, right? Or they may say, because again, customers kind of always have that feeling, right? They have their guard up. Now, exact same answer given to them on an iPad, given to them on your phone, just simply stating, you know what, that's an amazing question. I actually, have an answer to this that I recorded because I get it asked so often. I actually want to share this with you. Immediately what happens is, in their mind, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, what do? They immediately, the guard comes down, because now this is no longer something that they perceive to be a message that was tailored and, to them, to try to get them to take a certain action. It's like, no. I've gotten this question so much as a pro that as a pro, I decided to go out there and actually record this well thought out video that was going to answer and touch on every single of the major points. This is a practice that I think more people should use in their businesses as sales pros. What's your take on that?
Very, very valuable. In fact, I can remember for the company that I sell for, we had to switch a little bit of that because we started seeing a trend in shorter content and more of the reels and stuff like that as TikTok was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just use it as a reference. But they wanted that little bit to digest. And I'm actually, on the next week from today, I'm recording FAQs and short little excerpts that we get for NTS. This is a company that hasn't even been available for all public to purchase for a year. We're coming up on that in November. And we're going to shoot a massive content set of FAQs about shingles and knowledge and types of shingles and stuff like that, because they're the questions we get all the time. And if I'm going to be the expert in shingle knowledge in the industry, it helps to have the familiar face easily accessible on our website and YouTube and all the content, to where even a consumer could go and ask that question and find that thing. And it makes it, like you said, no threat at all. It suddenly becomes this thing that I, as John, am not trying to pitch Susie Q this special thing and just get this ink on this contract or sign this thing today. I have this so many times as a professional. I've recorded a professional answer about it. And it does kind of give you that notch up from the pitchy person in front of a consumer to the education person in front of that consumer, both personally and in the video content they produce.
Being the industry pro, right? It just all of a sudden sets you head and shoulders above, anybody else that you're competing against with just a simple video. Like, when you really think about the simplicity of it all, right? It was the exact same answer. Just record it. And when you have the ability to, capture you in your best self, when you're all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, you don't have the stress of the day, you don't have, the flat tire that day, you just, you record your video. Now that's out there. That, to me, is the best version of you, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's producing that content. And that's the kind of face that you want to put out there for, especially if it's on YouTube and things like that, or it's like evergreen content. But then again, just on the one-on-one basis, just having that content that you could show in the eyes of the consumer, they're like, oh, wow, okay, cool. This is like really well thought out. Like, these people are really like the industry pros, because the next guy who comes knock on that door is trying to get that deal. If they don't have something similar to that, which they probably don't, right? Then all of a sudden you just won that deal, right, in the eye of the consumer. So for me, it's like, trying to get more people to use video. But now the question becomes, does the company do that? Should the company on the top level do that? Or should it trickle down to a personal branding level, not only from ownership, right? Because I think that more companies need a face to the organization. I think that that's vital. People want to do business with a company just because they're a little bit more familiar with like the CEO and or the owner operator, what have you. But then what about, the sales rep? What about the technicians? What about those kind of people?
So as a salesperson, I think you have to be personal branding because your company may have no marketing effort. They may have very little social media presences and things like that. So at a minimum, you are kind of taking the place of a missing social media presence for that company. If it's a smaller company or a owner that's just not familiar with that, you pretty much have to own that entire responsibility through personal branding. That's kind of tied back to the company brand. And at a top level, if you've got a company who spends, plenty of money on marketing, right, and social media and has a social media manager and all that stuff, now you get a platform that you can lean into, that you can build on. It's like, boom, we've got this solid foundation. Let me put this block on top of this foundation. And that's my personal brand that I'm gonna lean on in that moment. So personal branding should take place. Just understand within personal branding, when you're under the umbrella of somebody's liability, when you're under the umbrella of somebody else's comfort, the person who did stick it out there to spend the money, create a company, create that initiative that you didn't create, you need to be respectful of that, right? And how you lean into that and how you co-brand with that is very important. But personal branding is key. I had someone stop me at a grocery store one time and they said, "Oh, you're the Facebook guy for Equity Builders." Now, do you think that was my personal brand? No, that's the company that I was selling for, right? Mm-hmm. So they recognized the platform that my face was on. But I've also had people, a homeowner, email me and ask, "Hey, a roofer's trying to sell me this shingle. Is this a good shingle?" Because this person had gone home, done their own research, found me somehow through the internet with shingle and shingle knowledge, emailed me to ask me if that was a good shingle. Personal brand, right? They will find you on various different platforms. And the more you can be on, whether that's a really good foundation from the company and you're there, great. You leaned into that brand. You're building on that. You're continuing building on that. Perfect. If they find you through your personal brand, now I'm getting found through multiple different levels, company branding, personal branding, and it opens the door to the reach that I have, the impressions that I make, and how I can then educate, inform, and ultimately obtain that person as a consumer.
That's awesome, man. And there's, when it comes down to sales and marketing, there's like so much to talk about, right? When it comes down to business development and like how you build your business as an entrepreneur, it just seems like the conversations can go on forever, right? Because there's so many layers that you have to go through in order to achieve this degree of, of holiness in the entrepreneurial space, right? From personal development to the information that you're studying and that you're ingesting, and how you're building your company culture, how you're setting a good platform for everybody on your team, and then how you're communicating to the general public. There's like so many things. But at the core, it's all about getting the education that you need and linking up with knowledgeable individuals that have already gotten a proven system. Which kind of leads us to, your courses and your classes and your coaching, your all of that stuff. How does that dynamic work? For people that may be listening, that's like, what, this sounds like really good stuff. I want to dive in a little bit deeper. How does that look?
Sure. So one of the things that I felt was missing when I entered the industry was I came from my father was in construction. So I had a pretty solid construction acumen, and we had all these brilliant salespeople that could use a little bit more of an edge that would create a competitive edge for them, sure, in their knowledge and how they educate the consumer. But a lot of these people working in the restoration side, or they're communicating with adjusters, and which is another sale. That's a whole nother topic. It's really a transaction. It's you're selling something, right? But the process of building your inspection, your documentation, presenting everything is very inconsistent. And the multiple companies that I work for, it was inconsistent with them. And it needed more clarity and the ability to just kind of have a process, because sometimes salespersons get so result driven, but they don't have control of the results. You 100% have to control your process. So my class is designed to implement process. It doesn't teach you how to do an inspection, but how to identify products, how to understand the construction, and then what do you do in that process when there could be compatibility issues with products like shingles, availability issues, they're discontinued, they're old, they're obsolete, and repairability issues. And then how do you convey all that to your homeowner? Because ultimately, if you can convey that logically to your homeowner, you should be able to convey that logically to an adjuster. And that's the base class, the Discontinued Shingles Masterclass that I teach. It's one of the most common private course. I go in and do a full day course with contractors, but then I build on that set. I have an additional set where I'll do the full deliverables, teach them how to do report writing. And that set has become so common privately that that's going to be the next class is how do you build the entire photo report? How do you prepare for various different defenses that an insurance company is going to give you? How do you walk through the process when it's the right thing to do? Because I am first and foremost, be honest and ethical, like do the right thing. But that's what the classes and private sessions are really designed to do, is to help create for this piece a process for your salespersons and inspectors to follow, because it then becomes more respectful of the company time, their own time, the homeowner's time, and the adjuster's time. So playing back to my equation of how time's important, I wanted to save time myself. I didn't want to go to that property 4, 5, 6 times to try and resolve issues. How do we do this from the front end and prepare ourselves for all the issues and be educated to talk through all those issues? Because most roofing salespersons I know get paid on the job total, not the number of trips they make. Let's fix the trips.
Exactly right. And so if someone wanted to go ahead and look a little bit deeper, get in contact with you, book class, book coaching, how would they go ahead and what are the best mediums for them to get a hold of you at?
Facebook, John the Roof Pro, Instagram, John the Roof Pro, either one of those. Those are the best ones. I always post the classes there first. If you're part of the private group that I have, that's fantastic. I post them there too. But again, there's 13,000 people posting in there. So they could get lost or muddied or missed in there. So John the Roof Pro, if you find John the Roof Pro on Facebook, Instagram, I do have a YouTube channel that's really designed for some very specific videos that the market needs from time to time. But those 2 platforms are the best platforms to find me, reach out to me, message me, communicate with me, get a hold of me. And then the links for the classes and the forms to fill out are always on there.
That's awesome. So John, again, we could probably go at this all day, but I do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to go ahead and hang out with all of us Dominators here. And Dominators, listen, make sure that you check out the video in the video description as well as in the show notes. We're going to go ahead and leave links to all the ways where you can get in contact with John if you want to go ahead and get some more information on that. Also, before we go ahead and jump off, remember, we have our hotline, 678-TALK-TO-US. That's 678 talk, the number 2 us. Make sure that you call in. Let us know if you've ever used any of John's services, what your take is, how you think that this could affect the marketplace. We'd love to hear your comments on today's podcast. And as always, remember, hustle, hack, dominate. I'll catch you guys on the next one.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, your #1 resource for tips, tricks, and hacks to help your business grow. Subscribe to our channel and follow us for more Restoration Domination. And follow our host at Rico Garcia Jr. on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.